beautiful day in the neighborhood. A beautiful day in the neighborhood. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? Would you be my neighbor? Hey, everybody. Sorry for the late sign on. Thank you to everybody over at the station for holding it down for us like they do. Call your friend that was supposed to be on. Let them know we are on the air. We are live and living color. We are on social media, live and living color. Just had a wonderful homegoing for a young lady by the name Kiana. She worked over at MMB Real Estate and did volunteer with Goodwill, and just a beautiful young lady who we celebrated her life. So sorry that we couldn't be on earlier, but that's, we do what we do over here. This is what we do.
Yes, sir.
And I want to thank the staff because most of the time they do it well. I got a lot to talk about. I got a guest here today. I'm going to get the viewers up before I introduce the guest so that they have somebody listening. Let me say this at the top of the hour. Variety Club Telethon, 63rd Telethon coming up Saturday and Sunday, starting out Saturday on Channel 2. I think we go on the air right after the news. It's a shortened newscast, and we're on until the 11 o'clock news, and then we're on again on Sunday morning, and that runs on WBBZ for Sunday. I'll be back in the co-host seat, and we'll be in church, but then I'll be so pray, because my voice is, I've been sick.
I was going to say, pray for the strength.
Dude, I don't know what hit me the other week. Not this Sunday, Sunday before last. Man, I woke up, my body wasn't moving, but I got to church. Got through all of those services, got through all of them, went home, and got on the couch. I was so tired and sick, I didn't even go to bed. I just got on the couch. And this thing, it ain't done with me, but we making it now.
I was going to say it's lingering because and I've been battling. We've been in a boxing match all week. I've been resting and pumping medicine.
Well, people brought me so much medicine, I didn't know which one to take. They brought me vitamin C.
You got
emergent this. I say, can't I just take a orange? My aunt talking about ginger and grinding up ginger. I can't stand ginger.
Love ginger.
Let me get to the point before I get to our guests. Let me introduce what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the Department of Education.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. First of all, did you watch the State of the Union?
Absolutely.
What?
Here's the bad thing. I even tried to just watch the highlights, and they kept running the same 3 highlights. And I was just like, this doesn't encapsulate 90 minutes of foolishness. But I couldn't even give a good recap of what happened. Besides nothing.
Well, I'm just gonna say this, where I was disappointed. And while we're talking about education, there's somebody here who's dealing in education. Where I was disappointed is that there was no mention of the middle class.
Yep.
There was no mention of the poor.
Yeah.
Now, let me say this. If the president of the United States can get rid of taxes for me, I may be listening.
Listen, you was getting ready to say, if you clear student loans and taxes.
Oh, he ain't doing that.
No, I'm just saying, if you did, like you said.
They doing stuff for the rich. They ain't doing nothing for the college student coming out of college. There was no. When I say there was no mention of the poor, there was no mention of the middle class. There was nothing. It was radio silent.
Yep.
And it was about a lot of other stuff. I've never seen a president, and maybe I missed those speeches, who gets up and talks so much about the predecessor by name.
Yep. Never.
Instead of talking about what are you going to do and what are you doing.
But I think he feels the liberty to do that because that's how he won. Like, that's how he's held this base since 2015. He has never authored a plan. He has never debated a plan. It's just what they haven't done, what they haven't do, and these outlandish, this is what we're going to do. And whether it gets done or not, everyone's still like, he's our president.
So here's the moment that it was a moment. So there's a kid up in the gallery who has some health situations. challenges, and he awards him to be a CIA agent or something.
Yep.
The kid looked at him like, what? And then Jimmy Kimmel and everybody else is like, he probably looked like that through the whole speech. Like, what are you talking about?
Right,
What?
right.
Now, it was a kind of heartstring moment, and I was like, okay, that's nice. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Big ups to the kid, to the young man.
Shout out.
But other than that, I spent an hour and something of my life
Yeah.
listening to complaints about the previous administration. And now so much is being blocked in court.
Yep.
And a court that he basically sat the majority of people.
Majority.
Or at least the majority of people are on his political beliefs.
Yep.
And they're even saying illegal on the flag on the play. And they keep throwing the flags.
Sure do. Sure do.
And he said yesterday, "Oh, so what? We'll just appeal." So you want to save money by just appealing?
Well, and
We'll just appeal.
And as we tried to educate on this show before, that's what they're hoping for. They want as many cases to get to the Supreme Court as possible. So yeah, take it to court. It'll go through appeals.
Where is Congress?
And it'll work its way to
Where
the
is
Supreme Court.
Congress? Where is the House of Representatives? It's like what? I need y'all to speak up. I mean, we in a fight, and it seems like that they just sitting on it, and I might be missing it.
No, you know what's so Stephen A. Smith, who's generally known to be on ESPN as a personality, he's now branched off in this because some people were rumoring him to make some kind of run in 2028, and he of course cast it down. But he's basically said, and I like it, that Trump is Democrats' fault because we didn't have a plan. And right now, and which is the part I completely agree with, right now the Democrats don't have a leader and a voice. Because Obama will get on the campaign trail, but there's no leader. And I think everyone is trying to get behind Hakeem Jeffries, but it's not like, yeah, go lead us. Like a Nancy Pelosi or somebody else.
Right.
So I think they're still trying to see if this guy from New York City can lead this whole party, but I don't think they're giving him the keys to do it.
So he's now talking about taking down the Department of Education. I'm going to read to you, and then I've got a leader of the school, and he's not here necessarily to talk about that, but he will talk about his school, and if he wants to opine on this. If the Department of Education is shut down, which he's supposed to be signing soon,
Executive order.
federal education laws will remain in effect, but their management would fall entirely to the states.
Yep.
So anything that has been mandated from the federal government, the states would now have to regulate it. Title I funding, which supports low-income students, would likely transition to block grants. Folks, I was elected official. I hope it ain't going to come through the regular city block grant program for education. Let's be honest. Most of the time, we can't get out of our own way. Transition to block grants, potentially causing confusion and delays at the state and district level. The reason there is not an outcry about this because it affects the poor and those who are most in need, including students with special needs.
Yep.
Including student. You cannot give each student with special needs to be a CIA agent. They need the help and the services. Number 3, funding for special education might be converted to block grants too. Some school districts may need to dip into reserve funds. We're already broke. Or increase local property tax. To make up for potential funding losses. Now, Buffalo is what's called a dependent school district. Yep. We depend on the state of New York for most of our funding. That means you got to go back to the state of New York. There's only so much in the pot. So if you got to go back for state funding for schools, and you got to go back for state funding to float cities, I want to know how all this is working out, because at the end of the day, the people who are going to pay it the most, hear me, folks, is going to be poor and struggling people. Well, how you say that? They don't own, some of them don't own houses. You pay rent.
Yep.
And that landlord who may have multiple houses is going to pass on
Yep.
the whatever it raises is going to go to you.
Yep.
So if you think you're paying $1,400 now, buckle up for $1,600 and $2,000. And when they keep saying how affordable Buffalo is, I disagree when you talk about what the average person makes in Buffalo compared to the rent. I got a leader of schools here. The opinions you hear on this show are not necessarily those of our guests, not necessarily those of our sponsors. They are solely the opinions of those who are speaking it. Will you introduce yourself, my brother?
Yes, sir. Dr. Chris Manning. I'm the founder and head of school of Buffalo Creek Academy Charter School.
Tell us why you're here today.
Here today because we have a hearing coming up next Wednesday on March 12th at 10 o'clock where the SUNY Board of Education, the trustees on the Charter School Committee, will determine whether or not we keep our charter and continue to operate, or we don't have our charter and we close at the end of the year.
So is there a thought that, is school doing well? Is there a thought, is the state kind of saying we're examining this to see whether we leave it open? Or is this routine?
This is well, the process itself is routine, but the institute, there's two bodies here. The institute that's the operation. These are the people who come evaluate the school, adjudicate our programs, and they appraise whether or not it's a good school, viable school or not. They make the recommendation to the Board of Trustees.
Okay.
So they have recommended that we are non-renewed based on solely on our primarily on our state exam results.
Okay, so let me say this again. I'm about to give an opinion that has nothing to do with the good doctor here. Because last week, did I not talk about this last week?
Yep.
Of how many schools
Yep.
who either have predominantly African-American leadership or predominantly African-American
did.
students have closed in this area.
Yes, you did.
And how easy it is for them to close it, knowing that these students have the greatest challenges of anybody in the city of Buffalo, anybody in the county of Erie, except maybe some rural places.
Yep.
Other than that, this is why we need the schools. I'm going to say this, and I want you to tell them when the hearing is. And I hope people, all the chatterboxes out there that want to get on bandwagon of something, get on this bandwagon, because at the end of the day, and I just said this to somebody, when I taught school, I took over classrooms that people had left, people who did not look like me. And I taught in a predominantly African-American, and I taught in Buffalo Public Schools. When I walked in as an African-American man, it changed the tone.
Yeah, I bet.
I ain't need to call no parent and talk about your child isn't assimilating well. And no. I looked at that child in the face, sit down, Junior.
Yep.
And he sat down. At the end of the day, these schools that have people that look like us are important. When is the hearing?
The hearing's at 10 o'clock on Wednesday. It's going to be
This Wednesday coming up.
It'll be at the Center of Tomorrow, UB campus, Center of Tomorrow. That'll be the remote broadcast location. And then in person, it's going to be in New York City at the SUNY Global Center. So we have about 47 people between families and kids that'll be there in person with me for the hearing. And then the remainder, we're asking as many people as possible to come and show up and show a presence and support at the Center of Tomorrow here in Buffalo at UB campus.
This is so important. I've attended these hearings before. I was on the Board of Education before. At the end of the day, I remember when, and again, I didn't have anything to do with the leadership of the charter school that was located in this building, but I remember when they came in, and folks, I'm just going to tell you, without community support, some decisions are already made in Albany. Mm-hmm. And what people do not understand, especially after COVID, these children have already had challenges. And now if we take them out of their environment in which they are thriving, how many students do you have over there?
We have 168 students. We've peaked at 215, so we fluctuate between that number and 160. We're a 5th through 8th grade school, so we graduate our 8th graders. It tended to be a 5th through 12th grade when we first proposed our charter, but then COVID hit. So we initially proposed our charter in 2019. We got awarded. We came here to talk about, we were proposing our charter. COVID hit, and then we said we're still going to open. So we took everything to the kids' homes. We took them their desks. We took them their Wi-Fi hotspots and everything and said, we'll start the schools. We started the school remotely. SUNY gave us a letter saying, hey, we understand that the pandemic has happened. So the next 3 years are going to look really different.
Yes.
So 2020, 2021, 2022, very different.
Yeah.
2 COVID years, and then 2022 was the first year back for everyone. It was our first year brick and mortar at all.
Wow.
So it was our
After COVID.
Yes, our first year with everyone in the building was the first year after COVID. Everyone had been out of school for 2 years. SUNY gave us 2 letters in a row, 2020, 2021, saying, we understand the next 3 years are going to look a little different. Only to come back late last year in November and said, hey, we expect the school to be here in 5 years. You're here. We said, well, of course we're not going to be where we normally would be. Give us 3 years and we can show you 5 years of capacity. We've not had 5 normal years. We've had 3 COVID years and we're in our second normal year. You acknowledge that in your letters, but now you're coming saying, well, and they said, well, we have other schools that opened in 2020 that are in a better place. I said, I guarantee those schools in New York City. They said, yes. And I said, well, there's a difference between New York City and Western New York. They said, New York is New York. I said, I beg to differ.
That's wrong. It's
the population, the money, the everything is a very different. They know this. They have a macro view of charters, but they came and said, well, our schools in New York are doing. I said, your schools in New York, their proficiency rate was better than Western New York well before the pandemic.
Yeah.
We knew that the population is different. The money you get is different. They get rentals assistance. There's a whole different picture when it comes to New York, right? And the staffing, you can throw a rock and find people that move from all over the country. They want to work in New York.
Yep.
So the comparison is not fair. The fact that we all we're asking for, we weren't indignant with their feedback. We said, we understand you want us to get better. We brought in consultants. We turned around operations. We fixed finances. And then they said, well, your academics aren't what we expected. We said, we will get there. Give us 3 years. We will show you 5 years of capacity. Then make your call. Make your call. Every other school has gotten 5 years of shorter capacity.
I've seen it.
Some schools have been closed down. They got 5 years plus 3, then 3, then 3.
I've seen it. I've seen it recently.
We're in our first term, and our first term is cut with 3 years of COVID. We're in our second year of normalcy. All we're saying is, give us 3 years to show. Give our kids a chance. Don't compare our kids to kids who had 5 years of normalcy. Don't compare our staff to that. We have our staff, our kids, our families, the community. Everyone is saying we're willing to lean forward more heavy to make this work. Give us a chance. That's all we're asking.
Big shout out, by the way, to the newest regent and Keith Wiley, member here, who just replaced Dr. Catherine Collins, who I just talked to yesterday as she retires again. And Keith, although it's not the regents that make this decision, you need good people who understand Buffalo on these boards.
Yes.
You really do. And so will any of this, if there is a change in the Department of Education federally, does that affect charter schools at all, or do you know?
It absolutely does. Well, charter schools rely on federal funding because we are privately operated public schools. So that the money that goes for students in special education, IDEA funds, we have that funding too. Now, it doesn't represent a large percentage of our budget, but it's still money that we need to carry out our programs. Every time a new charter is approved, they get what's called the Charter School Planning Grant. That's federal. So there's a lot of money that comes from federal to make sure that the proliferation of charters continue. That's not state. So everything has implications when it comes to Department of Education. I think the biggest thing that school leaders, districts, and families need is clarity. One option, as you just explained, that, hey, this possibly would block grants. One option says it's not going to change it, going to the Department of Treasury. Either way, I think if the government's making these really big moves, they need to really, I think certainty would solidify if they just gave us some clarity. Let us know what your plans are.
Well, I think one of the most disappointing things is when leaders don't really understand the impact of their decisions.
Oh, absolutely.
And how it falls down. So if you look at this now, and I told you, I just present the facts. I give you my opinion on something, but at the end of the day, we're already struggling. I'll just say Buffalo, academically, our children are still struggling. You know, I start to see some turnaround, then we lose our superintendent. And so we got a lot going on. And so you parents out there, one of the options is charter school, which is, it is a public school. It's run with public money. It just has its own board of directors and doesn't necessarily, unless it is chartered by the Board of Education locally, have to answer to the Board of Education like a regular school, but it is a public school. So it says that some school districts may need to, like I said, dip into reserves. Federal higher education, how this affects federal student aid programs would likely be reassigned to other federal agencies.
Yeah.
Where?
Yeah.
Where do you, how do you close an agency, reassign it to some? The only people going to be happy is the people who got student loans and they might fall through the cracks. Other than that,
Praying.
the ones who need to make payments, it's all up in the air. The management of the Pell Grant program might be transferred to the Department of Treasury.
Yep.
But just why you just? It's like moving chairs on the Titanic.
Yeah, and you know, this is still part of their effort of downsizing government or right-sizing government.
But you still got to have people.
You still got to have people. So, but yeah, I think it's a disaster. I think, to Dr. Manning's point, it takes time. It takes consideration, the cause and effect, the full SWOT analysis to see what happens if we do close the Department of Education. Can some rural states or regular states handle the Department of Education closing before just being like, oh, today at 2, at a stroke of a pen, I'm just closing.
But these are the people that it seems like does not matter to this administration. Here's another big one if this office closes. The Office of Civil Rights, out of this office, which addresses discrimination in schools, could be relocated to the Department of Justice, potentially complicating the process. Y'all better wake up.
Wow.
Oh, but he said no more woke folks.
No.
He said no more woke folks. We're not going to have any more of this woke. No more woke. Complicating the process for addressing civil rights. When I tell you, we making U-turns all over the place.
All over the place.
So that now, if you feel you were discriminated in the education process, you can't just go to the Department of Education Civil Rights Office. You're going to have to go through the Department of Justice that's handling big stuff.
Yep.
What do you think is going to happen when you take a complaint that has really affected you and you got to go to the Department of Justice? You're going to be lost in the sauce.
Yep.
And because this administration does not believe in diversity, does not believe in equity or inclusion, it means that your complaint of filing civil rights charges or wanting an investigation is going to get lost in the spaghetti sauce.
Yep.
Protection for students with disabilities could be weakened due to reduced federal oversight. Because what he's basically saying is, I'm going to close this department. States, you handle it.
Handle everything.
I don't know what happens.
Yeah, and it's going to be very different across the country based on who's in charge.
What happens here, in your thoughts, if this goes away?
New York is a robust state with a very large education department. I think, to Mark's point, I think it's those states that don't have such a large education department that I'd worry about. I mean, the coastal states, the large coastal states, New York, Florida, Texas, California, I think they're going to keep operating. I think they're already planning on how they're going to do it. Those smaller states that are really economically dependent on the federal government, I'm really concerned with that. And you're talking about millions of children.
Yeah, this is not good. It's not good for our children. It's not good for our country. And I am not saying, and I've said this since this man has been in office, I'm not saying that we don't need to stop waste. I'm not saying that we don't need to stop fraud and all that. I agree. But the way it's being done haphazardly, and Mark, I agree with you. I do believe he just wants to go to court.
Yep.
I do believe he wants to just be able to do everything, but with a stroke of a pen, with no involvement of Congress.
None.
There are laws that put these departments in place.
And that was the point you mentioned. I think he can even with the executive order. I think even on CNN they were talking about it. You still have to go to Congress because there's certain mandates in the Department of Education that were passed by Congress, so that they're federal statutes. It's not just you can get rid of like U.S. aid. This is like literally things you have to go back to Congress and do. But is this Republican-led Congress ever going to put the foot down and be like, hey, wait a minute? Because right now they give good lip service, and then all of the votes still favor him.
Well, I mean, look at how much he's done that he's had to reverse already.
Yes.
You get on talking about tariffs, and you're going to fight. By the way, I love you, Canada. And to all the members of True Bethel from Canada who come over every Sunday. I don't know if they were there last night because the lights were down, but who come over to Canada, from Canada every Sunday to True Bethel. We love you.
I'm getting ready to learn that national anthem.
We love it. Bruh. First of all, I didn't know you could have 3 citizenships like Elon does. Well, one was because his mother, and then his father, so he got dual citizenship. So I forget which one, but he's Canadian. He's South African. Let's just pause there. Let's just soak that in. Everybody smell that coffee. South Africa. Smell apartheid. Smell that.
Yep.
And American. The richest man in the world.
Yep.
still out of none of their mouths have been anything for poor, struggling, homeless, undereducated. None of it.
And like you said, the whole point of Elon's purge, government purge, is so you can try to find enough money to do the wealthy tax cut. And all kind of economists are saying you will never find that by just cutting government waste. The amount of money you're going to need to prevent a fallout after cutting wealthy's tax.
The purpose.
Some
Go
of
ahead.
their purge actually hit us because we're a 5th through 8th grade school, but we're a Silva Air Patrol school, Air Force Auxiliary Squadron. So our kids are cadets in the Silva Air Patrol. It's similar to Junior ROTC Air Force. Our unit is soon to be named after General C.Q. Brown.
Okay.
We were going to name it after him when he was the chief of staff, the first
Oh,
black man
yeah.
of the
Oh,
Air
yeah,
Force.
yeah.
But then we couldn't name it after a sitting general because he was appointed as chairman. So we have his photo everywhere. Our kids know C.Q. Brown. When I was in the Air Force at Kunsan, he was my base commander as the
Oh, wow.
as
Wow.
a colonel.
Wow.
So his wolf chief, I'm still close with. So his wolf chief, the old command chief at the base, and Chief Master Sergeant Air Force Joe Bass, who just retired, those two chiefs was working it for us, and we were going to have our squadron named after him.
Wow.
So we really admire this man. He's an
Right.
amazing person. He's always been a great leader. To see, and we watched it. We watched the news the following day to see how he was treated.
Yep.
Most recently, we were all hurt to see that.
Yeah.
This is an outstanding fighter pilot, a distinguished leader, the first black man to lead any branch of a service
Yep.
ever.
Yep.
And then he's a chairman, only the second after Colin Powell. To see how he was
Yeah.
treated is embarrassing. It left our kids hurt and left them confused as to what's going on in the world. These are kids born after Barack Obama
Right.
was in office.
Well,
Yeah.
so
these are-
many. Yeah, go ahead.
This world they don't understand. So they think they're born after Obama's been president. Kamala's been vice president. So their worldview is very different from ours.
Right.
So
Yeah,
to
that's
see
true.
that happen, they're scratching their heads like, what do you mean? The first black man to lead a service who's now chairman has been fired. The first woman to lead a branch of service, the admiral and chief of naval, has been fired.
Yes.
In the same day,
Yes.
students looking at me, what do you mean? Now we have to have a whole conversation, some new vocabulary words,
Yeah.
so they can understand and navigate what's happening right
So a part of this,
now. Yeah.
I'm okay with. I'm okay with it because it's the same way with Floyd. And you know they're talking about getting the officers' sentence commuted.
Well, I do know the D.C. mayor is painting over the Black Lives Matter Plaza. Yep.
So with George Floyd, it gave us the opportunity to say racism. It gave us the opportunity to say white supremacy.
Yep.
I got a whole shirt. I got like 3 of them at home in white supremacy.
Yes.
That I could wear in public.
Yep.
I can't wear that. I can, but it's a whole different vibe.
Yep.
And part of this is good. When I say that, this is what I mean. And whether I don't use the woke term like some people do, but I've always said we need to wake up.
Yes.
We've been lulled to sleep and we need to wake up. And this is real stuff hitting our front doors. And if we don't understand the power of the vote, if we don't understand the power of activism, because here's the thing. It's so quiet out there. When I say quiet, it's quiet out there. Where is that energy? Where is that energy? I'm going to give big ups to the pastors. I know now we're supposed to be not at Target for a month now. I didn't know that. I knew about the day.
Yeah. So
Now there's another movement.
yeah. So and that's what I think we talked about it before with Jamal Bryant. His 40-day Lent
Right.
fast for
Right.
Target was in place. But what I appreciate, and we talk about how leaders work together. He didn't bash the other ones that
There
were
you
going
go.
on. He
Right.
signed on and supported those. But what he has said, even on the Breakfast Club and national media, is he wanted the black church to unify behind it. So that's why he used Lent and said, instead of shopping there, we'll focus and put a spiritual focus on it. So
now it's all of Lent.
yes, it was
So
the
it ain't
40
gonna
days.
Ain't gonna be no Easter dresses out of Target.
Not from Target.
Well, you can get it off of. Well, guess what I was going to say. You can get it off of Amazon.
That's coming next.
You can get it at what?
Yeah.
Because it's the richest people in the world who are
Yep.
happy about all this. Tell us again when the hearing is and where.
Hearings on Wednesday at the Center for Tomorrow at UB campus at 10 o'clock. Please come. We are we're compelling. If you can reach out to those trustees that sit on the SUNY Board of Trustees, please do so. The only local one we have is Eunice Lewin. She's the chair of the Buffalo Urban League.
All right, Eunice. All right.
They have 5 trustees that sit on the committee that vote.
Yep.
Eunice is our local one. We've actually spoken to her. She's been very neutral but open to listen to what we have to say, ask the right questions, ask about academics, because she herself is a formal educator. She wants to understand what we're doing to move the needle in the right direction. She will be there in person. So we're hoping for the trustees to, again, move it back to committee, to their institute. We're willing to come back to the table and work with them to show our capacity, but we're relying on the community to call on the trustees, to call on Eunice to back us up, because, again, all we're asking for is a fair chance.
Just a fair chance. Folks, it's going down Wednesday. It's odd, and I didn't know you were coming today. I knew it was talked about, but that we decided to talk about education. Especially, I mean, this just brings it all together. This just brings it all together. Over 4,000 employees could be affected with some potentially being transferred to other departments. I'm just not understanding. You're going to pick me up out of my desk, put me in another department to do the same thing I'm doing over here, instead of looking at what we do over here and right-sizing it. You want to know why? Because this gets better press.
Yes.
This gets more attention to be able to say, I abolished the Department of Education. I abolished USAID. All of this should be challenged. None of this should be whether you agree with it or not, you ought to agree with process. There should be a process when you are abolishing and affecting people's lives like this. Now, I know we concentrating on potholes right now and how bad the potholes are, but don't miss it, because while you worry more about potholes than you are about federal money.
I was getting ready to say, you know how you fix potholes? More federal money to keep roads paved.
I want to preach. I want to preach that the city of Buffalo don't have money. And those of you who say, well, where's the money? First of all, the taxes have been low, and you need federal money. So while we're taking pictures of potholes, come on. All I'm saying, I ain't saying ignore the potholes.
Right.
But I'm saying use those same voices like you do local government to affect federal policy that's going to affect, because folks, if y'all don't believe it, what they call it, SNAP benefits.
Yep. They next.
They are okay, let me tell you the rumors in the room. They are talking about Kennedy is talking, not Tim Kennedy.
No.
Robert Kennedy is talking about he does not want there to be he don't want you to be able to buy junk food with SNAP. He says that we allegedly, and that's what I read, that why are we paying people, giving people money to poison themselves? So he wants to cut out like WIC, where WIC you can only buy certain things.
Yep.
So that you could buy fresh vegetables, because they're talking about then we'll support the farmers that you're hurting. Fresh vegetables, based on the sodium and all of that. So y'all better learn. If mama and them ain't teach you how to cook,
you better learn.
You bet you're gonna learn today.
You better stop scrolling on TikTok for entertainment and find a
recipe.
recipe.
You better learn today. I think until it hits like that.
Oh, absolutely.
And then what we gonna do? Get on Facebook? Like, folks, we got to be organized enough.
Or we end up like Russia and ran by oligarchs and everything else.
We are.
I think the biggest concern is that I think what sold the stock on Department of Education needs to go is that the federal government cannot enforce anything not mentioned in the Constitution. Education is not mentioned in the Constitution. So everyone takes that as, well, you shouldn't be in charge of education. Well, the Department of Education isn't mandating a curriculum. That's not what they're there for. They're primarily there for protection. And the biggest group that they protect are the vulnerable learners, those students who have IEPs, individual education plans, special education kids, right? To students with 504s, right? So there are there's civil rights legislation, there are federal statutes to protect people if they are physically, mentally disabled, to make sure they get a fair and equitable education, right? And try to include them as much as possible. Decades ago, it used to be a small room where everyone was left. Now we're including them everywhere. So
absolutely,
I think it's important that everybody realizes the department is really there to protect those most vulnerable learners, and having it at the federal level keeps a macro view. there is a lot of risk associated with pushing into states.
Hobson's, the doctor of dry cleaning, 874 East Delavan. Get over there. I love the new system. When you take your clothes, if you give them your phone number, if you can get text messages, they'll send you and let you know your clothes are ready. Hobson's, the doctor of dry cleaning. Brian K. Lewis Funeral Homes, 3 locations to serve you in your hour of need. Brian K. Lewis Funeral Home. Listen, folks, it's time to get serious. It's time to really let your voices be heard. Realize you vote in federal representatives. Some of your representatives from this area: Tim Kennedy, Gillibrand, Christian Gillibrand, Chuck Schumer,
The minority leader, Chuck Schumer.
Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, and then we have Republican
Nick Langworthy.
Nick Langworthy. I know you want to go down to Common Council. That's fine. No problem. No, you want to run over to Albany. That's fine. No problem. But what's going to affect your life right now in the next few years is in Washington, D.C. You can call it woke or you can call it whatever you want to. But all I'll say before I sign off, don't go to sleep because you might not eat. Until next week, power to the people.